Hey guys.
This is Michelle.
And Mark.
This is Mark and Michelle.
It is. And we are live tonight, as usual.
Nice segue, Mark.
Yeah, why not? And
oh yeah,
you
know, we've been just like doing things.
Right. Okay. And well, so we thought we'd get on here tonight and talk to you guys about what we were going to talk
about. We were going to talk about the amazing thing that happened this afternoon.
Well,
but first you were going to talk about when it wasn't amazing.
Yes. And here's what it is that was and is amazing, right? When I was autistic, it was very difficult for me. Krista! When I was autistic, it was very difficult for me to get things done. Even the smallest task took forever. And, one of the reasons for that was not being, I was going to say fluid, but not being efficient with my movement, not knowing that I was inefficient, to be honest. But I would spend a lot of time moving things around, trying to get something done. But even bigger than that, even more of an obstacle was starting something. Now, and I'll relate that to something that we all done. You guys know I went to college, Georgia State University in Atlanta, for an anthropology degree first, for a biology degree second. And now, I had serious trouble getting started on homework.
I thought we were talking about the car.
Well, we're going to.
Oh, okay.
But I'm talking about how, you wanted them to know how it was back in the day.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going.
Okay.
And it was overwhelming to get started. And so I had to spend so much time trying to motivate myself just to start doing the homework that I wasted hours trying to motivate myself. Right? She knows this.
I tried to help him motivate himself.
And to be honest, it just didn't work hardly at all.
No.
And so at work, I had a little less trouble being motivated, but then I wasn't very focused on the work I needed to do or what I was assigned to do. And so I still had a reputation for not getting things done. And so when I get home, either from work or from school, I just wanted to relax. You know what? And it just occurred to me, and I'll explain. You know why I wanted to relax? Why I wanted to relax is because being outside of the home was so stressful because of the social situations that I was exhausted when I got home, dealing with all the social stuff. And it became a habit to relax when I got home.
Well, that's what I was trying to say, that there were so many surprises at work, and you didn't like surprises anyway.
Well, good point. And there was probably all of those surprises
surprises.
Yeah, at school, especially. And because when you step out of your house, you step into a social world. Now, I'm going to address this to those of you who are autistic adults. You may not have thought about this before, but everything you do is social. Everything. And I recently, I was answering some questions for an interview recently, and recently being just a little bit ago. And I pointed out that there's a lot of science that points out that the human brain is geared towards being social. And it is. So when you step outside of your house, you step into a world that is entirely social. Because at the gas station, if you have to go in and pay, you got to be social. Grocery store, you got to be social. You got to know how to be social anyway. School, you got to be social. Church, Got to be social. You've heard the term church socials? That's why. So when you're autistic, all of the stress of trying to figure out social situations and not doing really well at that tires you, wears you out. Mm-hmm. And since everything is social, when you step outside of your bedroom, when you wake up the next morning next to your wife, this is social. I mean, it is. And you wake up next to a person that you have to be nice to and that you want to be nice to. And my autism quite often did not allow me to be nice to her. Right? So now, all of that motivation that I lacked, and some people would say, well, then you were just lazy. No. Motivation is a feeling. That's why they say feel motivated. You get yourself to feeling motivated. I've heard that phrase so often. Now I know why. Because motivation is a feeling, right? So I spent, for instance, and here's a good example. Yeah. Back about 2 years ago, I was going to change the fuel pump in our car. Well,
I thought it was the light bulb.
No. Well, we can do that too.
Okay.
But it was in the gas tank, the fuel pump in the gas tank, because in our car, it is in the gas tank. This is an example of how I had to do things when I was autistic. I spent 3 weeks watching videos and reading about it and worrying about it and generally just being upset. Yeah, exactly, Krista. Our friend Krista says, my daughters get really tired after we take them out in public. Yes. And that is the cause for stimming behavior when you get home, is because they have a lot of stress that they need to release. I was this way. And why it was difficult when I got home. It's because all the stress involved in being social. So the fuel pump, I spent weeks motivating myself, reading about it, trying to get things down in my head so that I could be motivated to change the fuel pump. Well, a couple years back as well, I had to change a headlight bulb in our car. And that was a very tedious job because it was a small bulb in a very tight corner of the engine compartment of the car. And I remember spending 2 weeks reading about it, watching videos, trying to figure out how to change it, right? And this is before we did the heavy metal detox. And so I spent, on a cold day in December, I spent a day out there, an hour and a half of that day, screaming and yelling and cussing and coming back inside and slamming doors and getting mad, all because this job was so difficult for my brain to wrap around, right? And
podcasters, you sure are missing out on Mark's hand gestures.
Right. I'm sorry. There's no way to, maybe we can show still pictures. We can put still pictures under the podcast link. But today I had to change the light bulb on the other side of the car. Right. And we got the light bulb Friday, I think it was. And then, which that would have been yesterday.
No, last week.
Last week? Has it been a week already?
Yeah.
Okay, it has been a week. So, hey, that's even shorter. So, so just a week this time. But what it was is I didn't spend this whole week going, man, I'm going to have to read about this. I'm really going to have to come to grips with this. I'm really going to.
No, he just didn't feel like doing it.
Yeah, and I didn't feel like doing it. And so I had to change that light bulb. Well, you know what? I had to take out parts of the engine and the air intake and that kind of stuff to actually reach it. The other light bulb I didn't have to do that with. But today, it took me less than 20 minutes with no pre-planning whatsoever, with no planning whatsoever. I just watched a video for 14 minutes, saw a guy how the guy did it, went outside. In 15, 20 minutes, it was changed and everything was back in.
And I was shocked.
I was shocked.
I went outside and said, oh, your potatoes are done. Do you have time? And he was already walking in.
Yeah. And
Are you done?
well, that amazed me. And I'm finding in the past year or so, since we've done the heavy metal detox and I've healed more and this kind of stuff, that all of these huge, insurmountable jobs aren't huge and insurmountable anymore, primarily because I've healed. But today, Michelle and I went through we had a long talk about what I thought work was. And
You guys miss our long talks.
yeah, they probably never want to be involved in any of those long talks. But it really, what I realized is work, whether here at home. See, I felt home was a sacred place because this was the only place. It was my inner sanctum. Now that I realized it was my inner sanctum to come and hide from the rest of the world when I was autistic, because then I could come here and feel safe. And I didn't, and work was too stressful. And I probably associated work with home with work at work. Now that I'm looking at
work at school
and work at school. So even work at home, stuff that I wanted to do personally for me, I wouldn't do because it was too much of a burdensome chore. And because everything can be overwhelming when you're autistic. And so we worked through that today, and I realized that I had built work up into this huge idol of a thing that I worshiped because that was the only way I could motivate myself to do it. And after changing that light bulb in 15, 20 minutes today, when it took an hour and a half the last time, I was like, that's pretty cool. Now, Michelle and I, when she took me to meet her parents, I think I cooked that first time or the second time. It took me 3.5 hours to cook a meal for the four of us.
And the kitchen was a disaster.
It was a freaking disaster. I even melted a plastic colander onto their stove.
Yeah.
Right?
It was a disaster.
That was back in 1994.
It was delicious.
Oh, it was a great meal. But
so you were 26?
Yeah, 26, 27. But my autistic brain at that point could not be efficient at all. And while I enjoyed cooking, which is why I just plowed through the 3.5 hours of cooking, now if I did 3.5 hours of cooking, I'm cooking for like 6 people, and I'm cooking. Well, I'm actually making food for more like 15 people, but 6 are eating it. That's what happened the last time I did that. And so
he still doesn't get portions.
I still don't get. I don't really care. You can send it home or eat something. Yeah, exactly. But what has been amazing during recovery is that I don't have to spend hours, weeks, or months, or days trying to figure out how to do a job. I can just do it now with a little bit of investigation and just get it done and knock it out. I'm thrilled by that.
So am I.
And because I'm not spending hours just trying to understand the basics of it. And while I thoroughly remember the frustrating time I had with that first headlight, I had no issues like that. In fact, it took less time to change the headlight than it did to take everything out of the engine and put it back this time around. The last time, it took more time to change the headlight than it did to take everything out and put everything back in. Considerably more time. And so now my brain is just naturally efficient, which is awesome. So I could probably, we talked about motivation and my ideas of work being a burdensome chore and this kind of stuff. And then what I discovered a little bit ago while we were, right when we started the live, is that I considered home the place where I went to hide from the stress of everything else in life. So I didn't want that impinging here, because then she asked me if I would finish answering some questions earlier tonight. This is about 8 o'clock. And I was like, oh. And she could feel my not wanting to do that. She could feel me wanting to relax. And I recognized that feeling. See, I wouldn't have been able to recognize this feeling 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. Now I recognize the feeling as feeling overwhelmed, burdened by answering these questions, these interview questions. And I did the work on it. I did some EFT, I did some forgiveness, and came in here and finished them up about 20 minutes before we went on. And I still had 6 of them to go. I thought I had answered number 5, but I hadn't. Only answered 4. Mm-hmm. And so I got them done, knocked them out, and they're good answers, great answers. Thanks to my sweetie here, helped me figure it out, you know. But now, instead of it taking me an hour and a half to vacuum a small room, you know, now I can vacuum the house in an hour and a half, or less, much less than that.
Much less.
Well, now that we have only 3 rooms with carpet,
right?
You know,
that makes a difference.
It does. But you know, it's been fascinating to see how much my brain has healed over the past 2 years since we've done the medical medium diet, because I wouldn't do anything to improve my situation hardly at all, unless it was like health-wise, cooking-wise, or something like that. But building a business was a huge chore for me. I had trouble sitting here putting together those documents. You knew that. But now
you could probably knock
them all out. And
the difference beliefs make.
The difference working on beliefs makes in an hour.
Yeah.
I didn't even spend an hour working on those beliefs, probably about 30 minutes. And now my life has changed.
And it was completely different when he came out. And I had to come in here and say, are you sure you're okay? Because he didn't come in, and he's been like vulture talking to me all day. And then all of a sudden he was in here, and I was like,
in here working for the rest of the
night. I guess you figured it out then?
Yeah. And so, you know, you guys, all of you guys, you can have this same thing happen for you. You know why I wouldn't commit? Committing was a chore. It was a burden. That's why I wouldn't do it.
To me, it's fun.
Well, you can teach me how it's fun. You know, I'd be fine with that. But guys, you can have all of this healing and everything else happen for you. You really can. Just start with the smallest, simplest steps, easiest for you. Because once you conquer those, then you'll say, oh, you'll build your confidence. And then you'll go, oh, you know, I bet I can try that. And then you can try that and see. And if you're not successful the first time, it doesn't matter. You can go back and do it a second time, a third time. There are no mistakes. It's just continuous growth. Sometimes you have to back up a little bit, but it's still growth, because by backing up, you see how far you've grown. And then you know, oh, okay, well, I can take another step. All this can happen for you. Just start. See,
you only have to be willing to be willing.
Yeah. Think about that for a minute. You just have to decide that you might be ready to try it. You know? And it may sound hard, but that's just a belief that you got from somebody. It's nobody's fault. You know, you may have had failures in the past that make you think it's hard. I know where you're coming from. Believe me, I do. Because I had to work through those very same beliefs myself. And so just take the smallest step you can take and see how it goes. Then take the next smallest step you can take and see how it goes. Just keep doing that. Tiny, tiny baby steps. And because you can recover from ill health, whether that's Lyme disease, whether that's cancer, whether that's autism, whether that's ADHD, whatever. You can come out of it. You can recover from it, because that is all it is poor health. And I had to stop and realize I stayed committed to healing over these past 6 years. I don't know exactly why, except for maybe that I really wanted to.
Well, you kept seeing change. You kept seeing positive change.
There you go.
And that happens.
Mm-hmm. And Michelle pointed out you've been committed to this marriage for the past 25 years.
Yes.
Well, for 19 of those years, I didn't see change because I wasn't changing, or so I thought. And she stayed committed, and she didn't really see change, except in herself. You know, maybe starting about 2008, you started seeing change in you. And in 2010, you started seeing change in me. So about the last 10, 11 years for us, we have seen change. And so, and that's it. Let the small improvements that you see motivate you to the next step. That's how you do it. That's what she said. Mm-hmm. The small improvement, the little bits of change, let those be your motivators.
There were some changes that got you real excited, especially in the beginning with the gaps.
Yeah, agreed. Well, and then losing the heavy metals, that got me really excited. Although that change was so gradual that it just didn't pop up into my awareness like a lot of the gaps changes did.
Still very much remember the first time you figured out that someone was bullying you and you were able to talk back. I remember that distinctly.
That was on the gaps. That was the guy at work.
And you were really happy
I was very happy about that because I had the motivation. That was a feeling. It was angry motivation that made me stand up to that guy. And he had been a bully all up until then. Then after that, he could still get on my nerves, but it was nothing like what he had been doing before. And I got in his face and told him, "Yeah, man, you're done. You and I are done. Get out of here." And from then on, for the most part, he minded his manners. There was something definitely wrong with him, but whatever it was, I don't know. But I was able to set a distinct boundary for him and told him, "You ain't crossing this."
And that was something that kept you going on the diet.
It did. So, guys, you can have this happen for you. Just be willing to try. That's it. Be willing to try the smallest thing and try that smallest thing.
Do it.
Do it. Because you'll see a change. And then let that change be your motivator for the next step. Guys, we will unless we want to see you guys on Monday, but definitely continue doing that celery juice celery juice, the heavy metal detox smoothie, and the lemon water, and then go to www.healyourautism.com/buy the book, BUY the book, and purchase our book, Heal Your Autism's Do-It-Yourself Guide, Healing Begins in Your Kitchen. That is a detox guide. It's all the steps that Michelle and I have used to get where we're at and where you guys want to be. And we will see you on Monday night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.